at what point, or what is your background that got you into all of these statistics that you share?
The fun thing about that is I actually don't have any formal statistics background. I am a computer guy by training and trade.
Okay.
So
So you're an
one thing,
IT guy.
yeah, well, like one thing about like the programmer mindset is that we kind of think to ourselves, well, why would I leave a problem unsolved? I can do that.
Hmm.
And so the idea for the ELO ratings was actually I got that from somebody on a Discord server somewhere. Just we were talking about, well, wouldn't it be cool if we had some way of measuring major match performance? And I thought, well, I mean, there are ways to do that. I'll just start typing and see what happens.
I mean, I can start typing and see what happens, and the answer is nothing. You know what I mean? Like I might crash my computer. I'm not getting anything out of that. So you have not just a computer background, but you have software engineering
Yeah.
background. Okay, that explains where this comes from. So I want to go to the analyst. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. Let me back up. Yes, I do want to go with the analyst. Now, when I was looking at that earlier, is this software that you have written?
Yes.
And how does it work and what does it interface with?
So USPSA Analyst is what I kind of what I decided to call this little tool. At the very beginning, I wrote it for the purposes of filtering match results in a different way, so I could say compare myself to everyone shooting low cap as opposed to revolver shooters, which of which there are typically zero at other local matches. So
Okay.
once I did that, I kind of had the 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 structure I needed to start reading practice score match results and doing more analysis on them. So what Analyst does is it'll take a list of URLs for practice score match results and run the ELO rating algorithm on them. And so the way ELO works is that it's kind of it's based around the idea of making predictions and then correcting itself when its predictions are wrong. So if
How, how does it know the predictions are wrong?
so say you and I are shooting at a match, and the starting condition in ELO is that everyone's rating is the same. So if we perform differently at a match, say if you beat me by 5%, then it knows that our ratings shouldn't be the same and that yours should be a little bit higher than mine. So it'll kind of update its estimations in that direction, and eventually it'll get to the point where its predictions are fairly close to what's actually happening, and that's when the ratings have kind of converged on like a relatively accurate position.
Okay, so assuming there's no catastrophic issues, a disqualification or something happens to your gun, like I had at nationals in 2020 where I had basically a squib round,
Yeah,
so I zeroed a stage. I mean, I assume that as long as you don't have something like that, then it gets to be fairly accurate.
yeah. Some of the secret sauce is in ways I try and avoid counting catastrophes like disqualifications. In particular, if there's a stage where a lot of people end up zeroing it, I kind of reduce the impact of that on the ratings for kind of the same reason. The more people who zero something, the less possible it is to draw like good statistical analysis out of that stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just manually then? So I take it then if you're running the program and you're getting these results, you're manually going in and changing that, or just deleting it.
So the algorithm kind of does some makes some effort to detect those sorts of things.
Okay.
Yeah, so it all happens automatically as it's processing the results.
Okay. How long did it take you to write the software?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let's see, a long time probably.
Okay.
I think on the order of a month or two of like working hours, say.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay. So I take it you would have to write some, run it, write some, run it to see where the problems
yeah.
were.
The the basic structure was relatively easy to get right? Like just doing the ELO math in the first place. The part where I've spent a lot of time has been on filtering, like we talked about, and also on finding what the right parameters and what the right mathematical tweaks are to generate things that look right to the, to the trained USPSA followers' eyes.
Okay.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
of the, when I run a rating set, I look at Open and think, well, Slater should be on top of this, or I look at PCC and think, well, Max Leo Grande should be winning this, and if they're not, then there's usually something at issue with the math beneath it.
Okay. This kind of reminds me of the movie The Internship with Vince Vaughn. I take it. Did you see the movie?
I don't think I have no.
Oh, you might want to watch it. Actually, you might find it pretty funny. But so real quick, it's Vince Vaughn and I can't think of the other guy's name. Owen Wilson. So they're laid off salesmen and they get an internship at Google. So they're having to do software stuff and other things. And there's a scene where, of course, it's very stereotypical. They spend a night out at the Golden Gate Bridge overlooking it, and they decide to come up with a software program that you could run on your phone, an app, to be able to determine if you're sober enough to drive or not. And the Asian guy's like, I can write that S on the way back on the bus. It was very funny, but you might find that movie a little bit funny because there's a bunch of software stuff that they're always talking about throughout the movie, and of course Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson are like 40, everybody else is like 20, so there's that huge disconnect. So it's actually pretty darn funny. But when you said it took you a month or two for some reason, that whole, I can write that overnight, I'm like, that didn't happen. So what are the capabilities of this software? Or maybe it's easier to say limitations, I don't know.
Yeah, that might be an easier way of looking at it.
Okay.
The biggest limitation as far as generating good ratings goes is that ELO in general, the math works best when people are well connected. So I don't know how well it would do on, say, the data set of all USPSA matches. In that case, you have a lot of disconnected islands, so people who shoot in local areas who don't travel very much. And there's only so much you can do with people who travel to major matches to spread ratings around, out around the country correctly. The ratings that I've shared, those are based off of major matches going back to 2019. So I found that's a pretty good set, and not only does it generate ratings that look right, it also does a pretty good job at predicting kind of the general shape of results kind of going forward too.
Okay. I went ahead and I just clicked on the first one, which was Carry Optics, that you have shared, and your ratings I didn't check to see how many there were, but that doesn't matter. Looking at the top 5, Nils, JJ, Max, Mason, and then Christian Seiler, which I was kind of surprised. Has he competed in that many Carry Optics matches to... I would be surprised that he's shot that many Carry Optics matches to place him in the top 5.
So he's actually only shot, as far as I know, just the one in the data set.
Okay.
It might have been 2. He didn't shoot Carry Optics Nationals, I think. So I think it was 2 Dragons Cups, maybe.
I think he shot Area 8 last year and was 3rd.
Was he in Carry Optics? Yeah, I saw him there. I don't recall if he had his open gun with him or if he was in Carry Optics. But at any rate, one of the things the math does is it uses multipliers so that when you first start shooting, your rating changes by a lot more, so it kind of gets you to the right general neighborhood sooner.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's kind of took advantage of that by being himself and shooting really well at the first match he ended up at, and that gets them higher up the list pretty quickly.
I have a spreadsheet with all the area champions from
Yeah.
last year. So let me go to area 8. Nope. It was area 6. That's what it was. And Max was first, JJ was second, Christian was third. So that's, I knew I had seen him on an area.
Yeah.
That's why I was kind of excited, thinking he was going to shoot Carry Optics Nationals, and then, initially he was going to, but backed out because of World. So now it looks like you have done this a couple of years now. This is not the first year you've done this.
I started, I really only just toward the end of last year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you by chance do it? I'm scrolling through your Instagram to see if I can see anything from last year. Did you run them before like the last nationals and then go back and compare?
I think it was for one of the, it might have been Area 4 last year. I actually I have a mechanism to look at registrations and then generate predictions. So I looked, I'm pretty sure it was Area 4 last year that I looked at ahead of time and made some predictions, and those
Okay.
came out fairly well, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm able to find a link for you if I non-full
Okay.
screen here, but
That would be interesting. What made you decide? I mean, I know there was a discussion on Discord, but what made you decide to write the software so it can be so encompassing?
once I got started, I found that the the data it was generating was fascinating to me, and that's typically enough for me to spend a really a really surprising amount of time on stuff. Oh, this is interesting to me. I'll really crack on and get a ton of it done. And this is for sure one of those cases. One of the things that I've found really interesting about the past, say, year or so on Instagram is all the USPSA data coming out, and I mean, this is it's a really interesting way to look at shooter scale in a way that classification may not fully capture.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not one of those people who says that the classification system is totally broken, because one of the findings I've generated out of this data is that it's actually very highly predictive of match results. There are outliers, like the ranges, say, of ELO rating and classification overlap at the very edges, but the average GM is a lot better than the average M, who's a lot better than the average A, and so on down the spectrum.
Okay. All right. So it throws that whole paper GM comment in the trash.
Yeah, they do exist, but I don't think they're nearly as common as
People
people make out.
Yeah, I agree. I've never liked that term, so it's interesting that your statistics show that it's not to be the case.
Yeah, I like Steve Anderson's thing on that. You know, if you're going to call somebody a paper GM, you'd better be one yourself.
Yeah, yep. I totally agree with, and I like, yeah, I agree with him. All right, so what are we looking at here, Jay?
So on screen we've got a line chart with a couple of lines on them. There is a blue line which is it's plotting the shooter's place versus their percentage. So at the very left-hand side, there's somebody, the winner of the match at 100%, and then the percentage kind of goes down by place as you move further along. And the green and red lines above and below that blue line are the ELO-based predictions that I made for each shooter. So if the blue line's between the other two, the prediction was pretty good. If it is outside, then the prediction was a little bit off.
Okay. So for the most part, it's right in between.
Yeah.
Okay.
The big thing to remember about ELO is that it's based on, it's very much a past performance thing. It doesn't really account for people getting better or worse over time. It's very much a trailing indicator of where people end up. So that's, I think, one of the main reasons why it gets things wrong when it does.
Okay. So it would be interesting. So how could, let's say me, let's say I decided, like you went from what, B to G in a year?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. Let's use you as an example. How would you use the software initially as a B class shooter and then run it as a GM and then compare the two to see where could you even do anything like that?
So I don't think it gets specific enough to get into analysis for individual shooters. It will
Okay.
it will tell you at a given match where you've overperformed and underperformed based on how your rating goes up or down. One of the things that I found gives better results is the maths actually run not per match but per stage. So your rating will change a little bit in this system based on each individual stage performance.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it'll be like a little bit of a roller coaster, just like your stage performance.
Exactly, yeah. And you
Okay.
can use that to say, well, I gained 10 rating points on this stage, but I gained 40 on this one. So it was this. What did I do better on that stage? Why was there a bigger bump from that?
So, okay. So it could give you the opportunity to really kind of pinpoint where you performed well, maybe, and then analyze the whys and try to just replicate that.
Yeah, it might give you some insight into what you do well that you may not see elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, so absolute scoring like we use in our game is it's a good way to score, but it's not necessarily a good way to analyze your own performance because being relative, it's hard to say. Well, being absolute rather, it's hard to say. Well, I did relatively well on this. Yeah.
Everything's relative.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the time it is.
Yeah.
It matters how well you do compared to your opposition, and that's what the ELO math shows you really clearly.
Now, okay, and maybe this is irrelevant, but could a B C D M G whatever use the software to compare themselves to other equally classified individuals over certain major matches?
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the best use cases for it, in that it can give you an idea of how you're doing against your direct competition. Say in carry optics, especially where every classification is so crowded because everyone shoots carry optics. It can be a little bit difficult to say, well, like, how good am I though in the realm of carry optics M's? And because it's so well populated, and because the people who shoot carry optics tend to shoot a lot of it, at least in the last year or two, you can get a pretty good sense for whether you're keeping up with kind of the overall slow gain of skill we see over the past, say, decade or in the sport, whether you're kind of ahead of that curve, behind it, or right on track.
How would you recommend? So it says view USPSA results, generate ratings, predict outcomes. If I were to come to you and say, Jay, what's the best way for me to use this to try to get better and see where I stand with the competition, what would you recommend that I do?
I think some of it that it might even be it's a stumper, that one.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who stumbles over my words at times. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly one of those people for sure. As far as using it to get better, I'm not. I've given a couple of ideas of ways you might be able to use it to help analyze your own results, but one of the most useful things I think is giving you an idea of how good your competition is too. If you go to a match and you I don't know, you shoot against like Matt Hempel or Luke Cow or somebody, like the
Thanks.
very very high level guys, but
Yeah.
because GM, despite having a very small percentage, actually it's a very wide class in terms of skill. You might not get the right idea about yourself if you go to one of those and they put like 30% on you.
And they would.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be before we stepped up to stage one. They're already 30% ahead of me.
just though being able to look at the ratings and know, oh, these guys are actually like, like the top 20 or 30 shooters in the country. It's gives you some perspective about your own level compared to that, as opposed to, say, the guy who squeaked into Grandmaster and not really in contention to win majors. It's, obviously still a very good shooter, but not in that kind of middle upper tier of Grandmaster who is a threat to win like any major they go to.
Okay. So I'll use Matt. I've had Matt on. Let's say over the last 3 years, he and I have only shot the same major 4 times. I should still be able to run something, I assume, that will show me a comparison between me and him to see if I'm closing that gap over those 2 to 3 years, maybe.
Yeah, that's the joy of Elo, I guess, because the idea is that it's comparing relative performances among the entire field at once. Even though you're not shooting against each other very often, you're shooting against a lot of the same people pretty frequently.
Okay.
And so kind of using them as carriers, you get some idea of your performance relative to each other because the system knows what your performance is relative to some middle group of people.
Now, how does one... So let's say I wanted to compare myself to Matt Hempel. I mean, I am not that much of a masochist, but let's say I did, and I was. How would I go in and even do that? Like, how do I run this program to be able to do that?
Well, the primary way for that kind of thing is doing your own run of the rating system. The trick that's I don't know if I want to say straightforward necessarily because I'm not a user interface designer by any means. But once you've downloaded Analyst, you can run it. There's an option on the main menu for generate ratings, and in the little top right corner rather, there's a like a menu option to import a file. And one of the things that I distribute along with the software is the 2019 to current set of major match data that I use.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good place to start. It's also useful if you have like a couple of active local clubs that you shoot against, where you shoot against people who you want to like compare yourself against. You can kind of do your own local match data set, and those work pretty well too, I find. As long as you're sticking within, say, one region, there's enough interconnection in the like the set of shooters for the math to work reliably.
So I could use. So I'm like I said, Central Virginia. I live in the Fredericksburg area, about an hour south of DC. So I could use those matches and maybe another local match to compare myself locally.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I've done that. One of the options, again, because these days low cap divisions are pretty sparsely populated. For the Western Pennsylvania matches, I do like a little leaderboard for my own interest, and in low cap, I am second place, usually behind a guy in single stack and on par with a either like an upper B or lower A production guy, which is about what I'd expect.
Okay.
Yeah, just the handicap for the slow reloads.
So I assume you've got to create an account.
It runs entirely on your own machine, so no account.
Okay, so
Yep.
how would I... So if I click on this button here, or do I just go over here where it says... No, that wouldn't
Yes,
do it.
if you hit that link and then scroll
Okay.
down a little bit on that page, a little bit further down, there should be... Yeah.
Oh, right here.
Yep.
Okay.
You just download the Windows zip file if that's you, and
Okay.
I don't have a Mac version because it's annoying doing things for Mac without paying the
agree.
Apple tax.
Well, I just find Apple annoying anyway. So.
Yeah. Now, you'll find a lot of friends in software circles with that opinion.
I wondered why I like those people. All right, so I've downloaded. I've clicked on it. What do I? All right, hold on a second. I'll set that over there. What am I clicking on now to get this thing? Do I click on the USPSA result viewer?
Yep.
Okay.
So you have to do the thing where it says you want to extract the rest, and yeah.
Extract all. Yep. Okay, we'll go there. So if people end up watching the video, they can see how this works too.
Have a little quick tutorial.
Exactly. Yeah. And with 3 screens, I don't know where it's going to pop up. It went somewhere where I have no idea.
Maybe try extracting everything first and then launching it from where we extract. Like I keep mine in a folder on my desktop.
Oh, there we go.
That's probably why.
That's exactly why.
It's not a virus. Crossed my heart. Scout's honor.
Yeah, I need to. I added McAfee back on my computer, so I need to go back in and disable the other thing now. So you're saying you have already. So I take it back here.
Mm-hmm.
If we go back to this one. Now you said you supply some results already, or something to draw from.
Yes. So if you head back to Analyst, the bottom right button is the one that'll take you into the ratings thing.
Okay.
If you go to I think it's actually the up arrow in the top right. I think that's the import option. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Import.
And then the L2 since 2019 option there, or nationals and area. Either one of those will do.
All right, we'll just do nationals and area.
That'll be faster to download too. Yeah, so it'll it's going to start downloading those in the background. It'll take a little bit to pull all of them down.
Okay.
Yeah, but
well, we'll let that go then for now. Is there a way you know when they're done, or do they just disappear?
So it's if you hit advanced now, it'll finish downloading them before it calculates ratings, and it'll give you a little progress bar to show.
Okay, I gotcha. Oh wow. Oh yeah, there you go. Oh, that's pretty quick.
Yep.
It's jumping across there.
I try and be a good internet citizen because I'm just visiting the Practice Score website basically to get these to get the results files here. So I try and do my best not to overload things for them.
Okay. Wow. It's a lot of names on there.
The bar graph icon in the top right, that'll give you statistics about the number of shooters and their kind of relative ratings.
So it says average rating 1001. What is the maximum rating that a shooter can have? Do you know?
So as far as maximums go, there's not a hard stop. The numbers will go up basically until the predictions are accurate. So if somebody was, I don't know, twice as good as Christian in open, he'd end up with a significantly higher rating just until the predictions the system was generating started to come into line with reality. With the settings that I send out by default, the maximum's kind of in the 1900 to 2000 range. Just kind of not the, like I said, not the maximum attainable, but just sort of the maximum that seems to show up in the numbers.
Gotcha. Now, how would I use this information for me now? It's if I wanted to see where I compared to others.
Well, you can plug your name in the search box and get a sense for the number.
The eyeball?
Just the search thing there, middle of the screen under the bar of divisions.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it there.
Yep.
Let's see what happens. Oh boy, I may have to. Oh, 8. All right. Nobody's allowed. I'm editing this out. It's funny. You can see me dip down and then come back up. That's about how my shooting's been.
Yeah, it's one of the really interesting things is how well it seems to capture trends like that.
Okay.
If you were to look at Max Michel, for instance, you can see he's got a very high peak in the kind of 2020, early 2021 region when he was, the guy in carry optics. And as the rest of the national heat has kind of come along too,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
he's slowly begun to drop off as they kind of take the rating points from him and bring themselves up to his level.
Okay. Very interesting. This is pretty cool. So you could really take someone like, you know what? I've had June Kim on here a few times,
Yeah,
and he was talking about. There we go. How? Yeah, there we go. It's exactly what I would have expected to see based on our conversation and how he's been performing. That's exactly how I would have. Well, exactly. I mean, that straight up at an angle progress.
yeah.
Very cool. This is pretty wild. Okay. I mean, you could just throw any. You know what? Since we talked about how Matt would kill me, let's see what we got from Matt.
I think he's an interesting one. He hasn't shot. He didn't shoot as much in 2022 as he did in previous years. So
Okay. Yeah, I don't
he's he slipped down the ratings a little bit, I think, in that time, but mostly because other people have been getting better.
Okay.
Yeah.
And but even then, it slowed a little bit there towards the top, but it's still that upward
Yeah.
climb. Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Another way to look at that on the main results table, there's an item for trend, and that's the change in someone's rating over the past 30 stages they've shot. So someone with a high trend is still on the way up. Someone with a trend near zero is kind of they've sort of reached their correct rating, at least for the time being.
So Matt has a number of 50, so it's still pretty.
Yeah, he's got some climbing still coming up.
Yeah. Lane Grease 57. Okay, that makes sense. Jacob Hetherington 7. Now this is Carry Optic, so
Yeah.
if you're just listening, it's we're not comparing all divisions. It's just Carry Optic. So Dazi Zhang was 66, Jacob was 78, and like we just discussed, Max was -3. Mason doesn't want to see this, so I'm going to say it.
Yeah, I think he had a rough nationals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he had a rough 2022 there at the Nationals there. So very interesting. Interesting where Seiler's 600 or 798.
Yeah.
But
Well,
like I said, he only shot a couple.
yeah. So he started his beginning rating because he's not classified in carry optics at the moment. He started at a rating of 900. So he basically his trend is he's only shot 24 stages. So that's just all the rating points he's gained in the time since he started shooting carry optics in this data set.
Okay. So yeah, there should be a huge jump. Now, the error. Where is this error calculated by the rating system? Does that mean it's like a plus or minus 2.3 or plus or minus whatever the number is?
Very roughly. So it's basically an internal value that it's the internal value actually that the rating system uses to determine how it should be adjusting people's ratings. So I scale it and I make it a little bit prettier for display since the numbers are actually very small. Like internally, it's operating on numbers between 0 and 1, and those kind of get inflated to the ones we see here.
Now,
So-
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
As a rating, it's kind of sort of like a plus or minus range, but it's not strictly one, I would say.
Okay. Well, but I see where your error matches basically the amount of times that they have participated in that division, because
Yeah.
Mills has a very small number and he shoots a crap ton of carry optics. So that makes sense. Whereas Christian Seiler's errors, 35.2, well, you have a very small data set to pull
Exactly,
from.
yeah.
So if he has a bad match, I mean, it could be way off.
Right, yeah.
So, okay.
Or if he has
so
a particularly good one, even.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, either way. Yeah. I mean, either way. But I mean, with his rating at only 62 behind Nils, chances are he's not going to jump dramatically up, you know. The greater chance would be that something catastrophic happening with his
Yeah.
gun and it go the other way. This is very interesting. I actually did not want to. I waited to download it and do anything with it till you were here, and I figured basically, yeah, it'd be a little how-to. So if anybody else is wanting to do it, they would be able to see it as well.
Yeah, that was a good plan. Also, it warms my heart to see it so relatively easy to get started with.
Yeah, it is, and I am no software engineer, so you have there. This is not in any way talking to practice score at all. You've downloaded this data and put it in.
Yeah, so it pulls the data from practice score once when you ask for a match the first time, then it saves it locally.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you were to go back to the main screen now, you can look at any of these matches, like the scores for any of these matches in your, like on your hard drive. So the bottom left button there, it'll do that.
Okay.
So that'll list the matches that you've downloaded and let you take a look at them score-wise.
Now, how would I go in and let's say I wanted to just add, like we talked about, local matches? How would I add that? Download it and add it.
There's not a great way to do that right now because I don't have a good way to search what exists on practice score, but I think so the slow way but the easy way is to go to a club's practice score page and add the URLs from there. Like, right click on a URL, copy link, and paste into the like the rating project setup screen.
Now, which one is that one?
That's the one on the bottom right again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if you wanted to create a new project with the icon up there in the top right.
Oh, the plus,
Yep.
create new project. Okay. The URL from the club.
Well, first we'll put a project name in to Analyst, and we can get started from there.
Okay. So create.
And then that plus button next to matches in the right column.
Okay. So I need to import all of the results,
Yeah.
like each one separately.
There's a way to do it faster, but it's probably going to be tricky to explain over a video call. You can also you can parse them out of the page source code too if you're a little bit more of an HTML jockey. But
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. But otherwise, just go in and click each one and
yeah, so
just add the URL.
you've encountered the first of the first issue that I'm actually fixing in the next release. I'm going to do probably
Okay.
over the weekend. So if you get the plus button again,
Plus button.
yeah, you actually have to hit enter or press that plus in the field once you've pasted one in, or else it
right
won't
there.
it won't add it. Yeah,
Then hit OK.
yeah. And now
Alright.
in the future, it'll prompt you to make sure you want to discard the one in the field if you don't hit the enter button to the plus. So
I gotcha. And that's all you have to do.
yeah, just for the matches you want to do, and that'll give you ratings.
Okay. Well, that's not that difficult. That's actually pretty easy. All right. I actually kind of like that way because I can't mess it up. Pretty cool. Now, what is the future of this USPSA analyst?
Well, that's another good question. I don't know how much of this I'm supposed to say, but there
okay.
is at least some interest, as I understand, from USPSA itself about doing kind of in parallel to classification, maybe some kind of rating system along these lines. Now, that's probably like the maximal bound, the upper bound of what I'm supposed to say on
Okay.
those on that subject. But I know I've heard people say, wouldn't it be great if USPSA did this? And there is like there have been some conversations along those lines. So
I imagine you've had quite a few conversations, whether it's actual or virtual through Instagram or whatever, with competition shooting analytics.
yeah, he seems like a good guy to me, and I really appreciate the numbers he can run. We come at our data from different ways, so
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I get mine by practice score match file downloads. I think he did like web scraping of the USPSA website.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
he's got a much broader set of data and access to it more readily, but it takes longer to get to download that kind of stuff, just because you've got to go and look at each page and each result, and even doing that automatically, there's a limit on how fast you can go.
I didn't realize that's how he was doing all that. That's
Yeah, so I think he did it once to get like a to download a good set of data, and he's kind of updating it over time. But one of the things that I say whenever I come across someone who's running for office for USPSA is it'd be great if we had some kind of API to pull all this stuff ourselves, because people want to see this data, and there are a lot of software guys or math guys out there who play the game, and they'll do it for free. You just have to give them a way to get the data out, and
right.
you get all this interesting analysis, which I think enriches the sport.
Oh, I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
in my conversations with Hopkins, Shadalov, you probably know Mike being in that area, just and others that I've had conversations with. I think that being able to draw that data and be able to figure, whether it's participation or like you said, the classifiers from the information that's being extracted seems like they're very good predictors. And I like how competition shooting analytics is going in and saying, this batch are really, really good. We've got a few on either end. Some are too easy, some are too hard.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a great way to figure out, how do we thin out the classifiers and see which ones actually work and don't.
Yeah, I think
So
it
it
was
would be nice.
on a recent episode of Short Course. Ben Barry was talking about this issue too, saying that the classification system is one of the big values the organization brings to clubs and to members. Being able to see how you stack up against people nationally without having to go to majors and shoot against them. And the better the classification system is, the better that value is, the better it is for shooters and for clubs.
Now, the USPSA has their own ratings, like top 20.
Mhm.
Do you think that this software here would be able to refine that, or do you think it's going to garner basically the same results as what they have?
Well, the top 20 on the USPSA page is just the top 20 classification percentages. So it has the same flaws and the same benefits that the classification system does. Something I hear said and also say pretty often is that classification generally measures how good of a trigger puller you are, as opposed to how good of an overall well-rounded shooter you are. The thing about that, though, is that the people who win, they're all uniformly very, very good trigger pullers. You don't need to be the very best trigger puller to win, but you won't win without being a very good trigger puller.
Right.
Yeah.
I get that. I mean, Nils, last time I talked to him, he came out and said I wasn't the best shooter at Carry Optics Nationals.
Mhm.
That was Isaac Lockwood. He said, but I was the best competitor out there.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing that classification doesn't fully measure.
Performance,
But
right,
yeah,
in a
but
match.
but any one of the guys in contention to win carry optics can go out and shoot 100% classifiers. Without give them like 3 or 4 runs, you'll see probably at least 1 or 2 hundos in there. And yeah, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what classification's saying. It's a necessary but not sufficient thing to get you to winning matches in national titles.
Right, but at least
Yeah.
it lets you know that you're getting very close.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know?
If you're, it says you might not be necessarily in the conversation for the podium or for the top step, but you are in the conversation to be one of those guys.
Right. You pretty much know if you're a master class shooter, chances are you going to nationals isn't going to thrust you up into that top 3, but at least you're making your way there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah. So as far as top 20 goes, I think this kind of system exists perfectly happily next to classification. The ELO side and the classification side, they're not measuring different things necessarily, but I think they're for different purposes. classification is a game within the game, and I don't see any problem with keeping that around for people to play as they like.
So I'm curious. One of the things that I've been talking to people about is live streaming. I'm not gonna go into that necessarily here, but part of that conversation is one of the topics that has been brought up is it would be more interesting if we were like NASCAR, where there was a point system to get you to nationals. Not necessarily just to be a competitor, but in order to be talked about in that this person has a chance to win nationals, then they have to be in that points conversation. Is this tracking something like this or creating a software that can do this? I feel like would be something that would allow you, because if you gave, you could do it a couple different ways. You could either base their points on their ratings, or or points based on first, second, third place at major matches.
Yeah.
Do you ever see like this software being able to be used for something like that?
Well, it's funny you should ask. It actually already does. It's got a way to score point series already.
Okay.
And I guess that's another thing I thought would be interesting. It was one of those winter projects where I said, well, I mean, I might want to run a point series next year for my match. I'll just build it in, and it can score it in a couple of ways. There's one that depends. Your score is the total number of people you've beaten at matches in a given division.
Okay.
There's one that gives points in kind of the like the Formula 1 25, 18, 15, and so on down the finish order to 1 point at 10th setup.
Okay.
And I think are there 4? There's one that just kind of gives you like an exponential decay function for assigning points. So the first person gets 30, the next person gets, I don't know, say 27, and then so on down to infinitesimally small numbers as you get further out the order.
Okay.
And there's one more that
0.0001.
Yeah. And there's one more I think I don't recall which one that is.
Okay. Fair enough. That's
just percentage, like the same scoring they use to do like World Shoot qualification.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so in Analyst, there's a drop down in the settings screen for rating system, and you can set that to points, and it will kind of, with tooltips and such, guide you through setting up a point series.
Now, where would that be?
So the rating engine ELO option there on the.
Oh,
yes, it's in the same spot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So midway down the left column, there's rating engine ELO, and if you hit that drop down, you can set it to points instead, and that will.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, why are you doing that? Current settings will be lost. Okay. Oh, so you could just play with it.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh, and then there's your options. Okay, so F1 inverse.
Yeah, that's the number of people you beat.
Okay, percent and then decaying. Man, this thing, it seems like it's got quite a bit of options here.
Yeah, it does a little bit of, well, kind of like me, it does a little bit of everything.
Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.